views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, the image of Border Patrol agents on horses whipping migrants at the border. Dreamers again are in limbo for a pathway to citizenship and rights of immigrants crossing the border. That plus a whole lot more on this edition of Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
Hello, everyone. I'm Daren Jaime, and welcome to this edition of Perspectives. As always, you can watch us here on BronxNet's Channel 67. If you don't, check us out on the web at bronxnet.org. Now, if you're trying to reach me personally, well, you can get me on my professional page on Facebook. That's Daren C. Jaime, Instagram and Twitter at DCJaime23. Coming up on today's show, the images of Border Patrol agents on horses whipping Haitian migrants at the border has once again brought the conversation of immigration and border control to the front pages. The New York Times writes in a recent article that the deportation of Haitian immigrants has actually been a stark example of how President Biden has deployed some of the most aggressive approaches to immigration put in place by former President Donald Trump. The question of treatment of people by the border that's actually seeking refuge in America is again being asked. What is actually the best way to protect our borders, but also remain a country who welcomes immigrants? Well, joining us now to share a little bit more in that conversation, we're pleased to have none other than Director of Immigration Services at BronxWork, Attorney Arturo Lopez. And Arturo, good to have you.
Thank you for having me again. Good to be back.
Yeah. It's good to have you back, and good to have you back for a time such as this and an important conversation. And I'll just go and I'll just ask you your immediate reaction to seeing those images that are so graphically put of migrants actually being whipped.
Very, very obviously, those were extremely upsetting images. It's not something that is something we're used to seeing. It's not something that, in all my years of experience, I've known to be something of a standard practice or practice ever employed before. So obviously, BronxWorks very much believes that individuals arriving to this country should be treated respectfully and with dignity.
Yeah. And when we look, we have not seen images like this before. When you see these images, they're very graphic, they're very telling. And we've got a huge Haitian community right here in the borough of the Bronx. Talk to us about some of the reaction that you've heard and what people have been saying, boots on the ground.
You know, I think some of the allusions to history that those images bring very obvious and are very upsetting to the community. It's sort of an image that they are not comfortable with seeing. So I would say that yes, the Haitian community is upset, but I would say that it's not only that community that is upset, but it's any person who believes that others should be treated fairly, and that again, that image was very upsetting, and simply is not standard practice in terms of the what law enforcement can use. So hopefully it can be dealt with quickly.
Yeah. How do we try to rectify this matter, given the fact that we know that immigration laws are very tight? It's hard for people already trying to get a green card right now. What are the options that are actually available presently for those people in Haiti?
Well, the problem is that if you are physically in Haiti, to apply for some sort of asylum would be very difficult. It's a process for individuals that are really in the U.S. Other than that, it's all the normal processes. Immigration through mainly family, some business, but the majority of people that enter are through family. And those lines are backlogged for years and years. So, it's not unheard of someone who's trying to follow all the rules and procedures and wait their turn, it can be facing a 10-year plus wait. Now, we're talking about individuals that are in a country that has suffered ecological disasters and are at the moment without resources. This 10-year wait can almost be impossible to survive. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing any sound.
I'm sorry. I apologize. That was on me this time. But tell me, how much of a setback do you feel this is for those particularly who've been following immigration and following the immigration story and the challenges to see this? How much of a huge setback do you think this is?
I think that it's very disheartening, the image by itself, because it furthers the belief in the immigrant community and with those of us that are working with the immigrant community that individuals are not being treated fairly and are not being seen as individuals who should be treated with dignity by law enforcement. And we would hope that would change and the immigrant community can be treated with respect and be allowed to apply for any benefits for which the law says they are entitled for.
And when we look, I know that we've talked a lot about President Biden and getting the response from the White House. The White House says they're just starting to see these images, and this is at least by the time we're going on air right now. The White House is saying that they're just taking a look at these images and just finding out about them. But, we do know that President Biden had promised a humane approach to dealing with immigration. But when you see this, we know that this is, as inhumane can be. From an attorney's perspective, give us a little bit about the rights of those persons who are at the border.
Well, the issue is that can be an extremely complex question, because you can say that each case should be reviewed individually to determine that person's rights and eligibility. The law is very complex, and there can be many factors that affect a particular case. You have certain issues right now where individuals are not being allowed to apply for asylum. Certain individuals are subject to expedited removal, which means that they simply don't even get to speak to anyone, attorney, a judge, or anyone. They if it's determined that they meet certain factors, they can simply be turned back right away. Now, for this particular group, this point in the border we're talking about a number of Haitian immigrants. For them, that return is being flown back to their country. So they're physically even incapable of sort of, you might say, coming back the next day and asking a question. Once they're gone, it's virtually physically impossible for them to make that route again and return.
Well, listen to this. I'm going to take a quick break and come back and talk a little bit more with you. Coming up after the break, we'll talk a little bit more with Arturo, talking about dreamers and how the rights of immigrants crossing the border, that's one, but also dreamers and the pathway for them to be able to receive citizenship. Stay with us, Daren Jaime, here on Perspectives. We're coming back right after this. Back here on Perspectives, Daren Jaime here with you. We are continuing our conversation, talking with Arturo Lopez as we talk about the recent findings coming out of Haiti, more particularly those migrant workers that we found being whipped at the border, something that has drawn not just stark criticism of President Biden and his administration, but another look at immigration as a whole. And Arturo, when we talk about immigration as a whole, I want to talk about during the pandemic. We know that immigrants were actually taken care of, undocumented immigrants. And as a matter of fact, 290,000 workers are estimated to have benefited from benefits during this immigration process. So on a national level, I know that we've got some real serious issues, but talk to me also about what we've seen on a local level.
Right. There are some benefits currently. I think one of the main things I'd like to speak about is the emergency rental assistance program. We know there's a large number of people facing eviction here in the Bronx. There's an eviction moratorium that's been extended to the end of December. And the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, or ERAP, is a program that can help individuals who are facing eviction and owe rent. The assistance is awarded regardless of immigration status. And I would encourage anyone in the community facing this issue to go to the website and either apply or contact BronxWorks for assistance with an application. We don't want to see anyone in this community having to face an eviction loan or be evicted and be without a home. Other than that, there are there are benefits. I don't know if you want to go into that every single one in detail, but I think the concern at this point is while there were benefits, many of these programs will be ending soon, and we need to look to how to support this community and keep it going.
Yeah. Any concern on your end? Because when you talk about immigration, a lot of those who are immigrants right here in our community, when this moratorium ends up, there's a huge possibility that a lot of these people could be into the homeless population. How concerned are you about that?
We are extremely concerned about this. We are keeping an eye on this issue. It's something we check up on daily. But as I said, we don't want to see anyone homeless. We're here to help the community. The issue if individuals don't apply for the EWAP program, there are other benefits that do take immigration status into account. So it is an issue that could particularly affect immigrant communities, the undocumented community. And I think that without assistance, it could be devastating to the Bronx. Worst case scenario would be large numbers of individuals or families evicted without a home on the street right here in the Bronx.
Yeah. What are you seeing coming through your doors right now in terms of the need for services in the immigrant population? Have you seen a lot more need for services given the fact that we're still navigating this COVID-19 pandemic and now dealing with this Delta variant?
We have seen a lot of need for services. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the immigration process has slowed even more so than before. So we're seeing issues in the community, not only from undocumented families, but also from even families who are documented and here legally, who need things as simple as just to renew their identification. Everything is completely in order. They're entitled to be here. They're here legally. They're eligible to work. And all they need is something as simple as renewing an ID. And this is taking up to possibly a year at this point, which is causing a lot of trouble for the community. I mean, if you're from an immigrant community, let's be honest, sometimes you face a lot of adversity because of your status, and then not having the documentation to prove that can be a huge problem for some individuals.
And so what is it that you want people to know, particularly right now, as it pertains to rights, and what information can you pass on to us in this moment?
I would definitely advise anyone that has any questions to contact us, BronxWorks, or any of the other service providers. They can contact 311. They can just Google Action NYC and find a list of free and trustworthy service providers that will treat them fairly, with respect, and give them honest information for free.
I want to take a break. Come on back more with Arturo Lopez. He's our guest here on Perspectives, talking about the immigration, really the whole immigration deal. When you talk about what's going on at the border right now, and we're seeing what's happening with Haitian refugees, you're talking about dreamers, and they're worried about whether or not they can actually be able to ever get that pathway to citizenship. So much is at stake during this time of of history and where we are, and then ultimately to know whether or not you're going to be able to be okay as a citizen and receive the citizenship that's been long talked about. Immigration has been a hot button issue in Washington, D.C., and certainly it is for us here in New York. I'm going to come back with Arturo in just a few seconds and talk more about immigration and where we go from here. Back here on Perspectives, Daren Jaime here with you. We are having conversation with Arturo Lopez as we talk about the current state of immigration. As we talk and we're speaking right now, President Biden's administration under full attack for the fact of how migrants from Haiti are being treated at the border. Reports and pictures, vivid pictures of migrants being whipped with whips, people in outrage, and literally the question goes again. How can we make this better here for our immigrants in the United States without seeing this kind of drastic action and the images that are so vividly in our mind? Arturo Lopez joins us right now on Perspectives as we continue having this conversation. And Arturo, again, you know, we said those images are very, very, very vivid in our mind, and it's cruel and it's inhumane. But I know that on a larger scale, the whole issue of immigration really centers a lot on DACA these days. So for somebody who doesn't know about DACA, give them a little bit of a background about DACA and where we are.
Sure. Well, DACA was a program first implemented by President Barack Obama. It was an executive action which allowed individuals who were brought here as children to apply for work permits. Unfortunately, there was no permanent solution given after that. With the previous administration, DACA could pretty much be said to have been under attack. It was able to just survive and is still existing now. There are still some attacks on it. But what we believe is needed is a comprehensive immigration reform package, which would create a pathway to citizenship for these individuals who were brought here as children, and possibly even widen the circle as President Obama had intended to do, which was create a pathway to citizenship for individuals who had essentially lived an entire life here with families and children and investments, careers and homes, and to allow them to also naturalize and also create some real procedures and outline the processes and the ways that these immigrants who are entering the border should be treated and what they could be.
Yeah. And I want to get a little bit more about DACA, about how right now things are really leery and in question. We've heard there will be some movement. Are you satisfied with what you're seeing so far in terms of the movement? Because, you know, from my perspective, you're looking at this here and there's a lot of talk, but it seems to be a lot of stall.
Yes, there's been no actual new legislation. So at this time, since the administration came to office, there has not actually been any new legislation, any new laws or processes. DACA is still in place. As I said, it is still coming under attack. What we want and believe is best for the community, the country as a whole, is what the administration said it would implement, which was comprehensive reform. And again, these dreamers are people who came here as children. I started working with them when this program first started. They were young adults at the time. It's been quite a number of years at this point. Many of them are graduating college, starting families, have careers, are productive members. We just don't see any reason why they shouldn't be allowed to stay and continue to add to the prosperity of this nation.
And what about those persons who are, you know, watching right now and saying, I want to be an advocate, you know, I want to really advocate for to see this come about. What can the average person do to really help to assist in this matter?
I think I would advise them to be active, pay attention to the news, understand what's really going on, look at their representatives, senators, congressmen, and see where they stand, and hopefully let them know how important it is to the voters to that laws be implemented that treat people with respect and dignity and seek to help, not harm families.
Yeah. What makes me scratch my head sometimes is the fact that lawmakers know all about this. They know that this is something that's really on the books right now, and that we really stalled this out. And when I say we stalled this out because this was a topic of conversation that really didn't want to be addressed in the last presidential election, and yet and still it's front and center right now. And I'm thinking about what we can do in terms of just moving the ball along, because it was a no touch thing. They didn't want to touch it before, but now it's like it's almost like you keep kicking the can down the block, and we never get there. And not to mention that when we look at Latinos and communities of color, we talk about the browning of America. Latinos now are going to have the largest population, in the United States. We got we have a lot to contend with here.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely encourage these communities. As I said, it's not only one particular group, not only Haitians, not only Latinos, but all immigrant groups across the country to really naturalize and take part in the political process right here in the Bronx, and everywhere really, but not only on a presidential level, but on the local level, to look at your communities and try to really take the time that's needed to educate yourself and vote and be active for positive change.
Arturo Lopez, got to leave it there, brother. I want to thank you for joining us here on Perspective. Certainly glad to have you. We'll have more of this conversation, talk about immigration in the future. Obviously, it's not going away anytime soon. And of course, we'll continue to follow it, bring our viewers up to speed, and especially when it comes to rights and knowing about the emergency response efforts that are actually available. We want our viewers to know about that. So we've got to have you back to see where we are and where things are going.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I look forward to talking to you again.
All right.
We have this great conversation every once in a while.
Yeah, it is a great conversation. Arturo Lopez, our guest here on Perspectives. Want to tell you, I'm Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless, and listen, share your perspective with somebody else. It just might make a difference in somebody else's life. We'll talk to you soon.
Many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light, cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in